John Logsdon back again.
Craig, how are you?
Fantastic. How about you?
Good, good. Joining you from the dojo this morning.
From the dojo, yeah, different backdrop versus last time.
Yeah, we
Mm,
were in the shop last time, so
right on. Yeah, seems like you got plenty visual appeal in your shop and everything there.
yeah, this is a lot of guys have a man cave, and I just have a 1,500 square foot office full of all my junk and a 4,500 square foot shop full of other people's junk. So I don't really need a man cave. I have a whole labyrinth, if you will.
Hell yeah. Yeah, pretty sweet spot you got there. Lots of memorabilia and all that. I remember geeking out on all
hmm
the patches and everything like that you got there.
Oh yeah, yeah, lots of that stuff, and kind of has little sections in here. There's the Hot Wheels section, the Tonkas, and the DVDs that didn't used to be memorabilia, but in this age of streaming, they get almost as much attention as the 50-year-old toys do.
Well, yeah, man. I know we were just chatting about it here a few minutes ago. As I said, I was listening back to that episode that I did with the pro ballerina, and she was talking about how she thinks it was her childhood trauma that sort of fueled her to become exceptional in ballet. And it seemed like you touched on something like that before. So, what's your fresh take on that?
Yeah, I 100% agree with her on that. I believe very, very wholeheartedly that our traumas do, they don't really necessarily dictate the direction we go, but a lot of times, especially with the type, our shared traumas with, you go to basic training and on through whichever direction in the military, job wise, they come with various levels of emotional trauma. But uh, you know, in the military, you generally, a lot of that trauma can be kind of mitigated by simply trying harder. So you find yourself in this position where mediocrity doesn't cut it, because with mediocrity comes the potential for somebody to come and correct you or be displeased. So you're just constantly chasing this level of everything you do, this top tier level, with hopes that somebody's not going to come and scream at you afterwards. Even though, I mean, hell, I'm close to 20 years out at this point. Actually, no, I think, come to think of it, I just hit 20 years since I went on terminal leave last month, and um, I'm still waiting for somebody to come and yell at me for absolutely no reason, and that I know they're not coming. And even if they do come, I don't have to put up with it. But
Right.
it just, you're fueled by this idea that um, the best possible course of action is to always chase the highest level, because it's going to bring the least grief with it, whatever that grief may be. Sometimes the grief in chasing that lower level is just that your life sucks, because you're not getting where you'd like to be because you're just not trying.
hmm Yes. I guess as you were saying that, it's like it doesn't seem like people join the Marine Corps without some history of trauma. Like the Marine Corps has to make sense.
Oh, absolutely. We're all
Yeah.
running from something. You can say that you're not running from something, but everybody is running from something, whether it be overbearing parents, they're running from the possibility of going to college, um, any number of things. None of us are just there because we're completely functional human beings that are ready to go out into the public and just do things. I mean, we all have, we're again, we're also chasing something. Um, some of us realize that the only way we're going to ever be able to go see multiple places in the world is if we join the military. And and the military sends us to those places because they're not all bad. You know, sometimes you're just partying at the Orchard Towers in Singapore. You know, I mean, on a Tuesday night. You know, who else gets to do that? You know,
Mm.
but yeah, we're all running from something. We're all looking for something. You know, it's not always the bullies that go and chase, you know, an aggressive lifestyle. Sometimes it's the person who was bullied and he wants to learn to not be bullied anymore. So he joins someplace like the Marine Corps so he can learn to take care of himself and assert himself.
Comes to mind, as you say, people coming yelling at you for something, like, especially for us, being on aircraft, it's, where it's like every step is so critical, in each job that we're doing. The attention to detail that, you set as an example that I learned from, and, looking at the work you do in your shop and, your hot rod getting these accolades and stuff like that. I don't know. It seems like it becomes like a passion, um, to just make things as good as they possibly can be. And, you turn whatever it was before, whatever that worry was or fear, whatever it is, into an art form.
Oh, absolutely. Um, myself, I tell, I try to tell myself that, uh, right now, if 10-year-old me was in the room, he'd be pretty pumped because, this is what, this is what my cousin and I were talking about when we were kids. We were gonna have hot rod shops someday. And, um, most people don't go out and chase that childhood dream. And, going in the Marine Corps really, you know, it teaches you can do things that you wouldn't normally think you could. And, um, on top of that, depending on what your job is, but, you're taught various levels of, you know, finished product that you're trying to provide, which, at the Marine Corps, we drive to be number one. We want to kill the most people. We want to blow up the most buildings. We want to get the most birds in the air. It doesn't matter what our job is. We want to do the most of it in the world over everybody else because we like to shit talk. And when you get out, that doesn't necessarily go away. And I think people find various mediums to chase that in. It seems like a lot of people like to chase that in the Facebook world or, somewhere on a computer. But myself, I decided to chase this childhood dream and push that attention to detail that that the Marine Corps really, uh, I don't want to say it manifested in me because it was already there. It was the reason why I chased aviation versus, one of the other various jobs. But I really just decided, I'm gonna continue this, and I'm just gonna do it in this world where I wanted to be when I was 10 years old. So here I am now, and I'm just building full scale toys for adults, and um, I'm kind of in an advantageous place where because I've done my own stuff to that level, and uh, people have seen that. I have I have customers that, for the most part, understand that there is no shortcuts. There's no, um, there's a faster way to get it done. Well, there's also somebody else to do it for you because I want to be the one who has the best possible product so that, not so much to brag, but for the purpose of just, you know, that happiness that you're chasing. It's happiness isn't a tangible. It's a byproduct of achievement. And if you're not achieving anything, you're not going to be happy. So I'm really just chasing that happiness every day. And, it feels good when other people notice it, take notice and appreciate it. So I guess that's just the medium I chose to chase it in. I mean, you're still chasing it in the aviation world, you
Mm-hmm.
know, you know, working on 53 still to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And, what do you bring to the team at the end of the day? You try to bring excellence, right?
Right. Yeah, it seems like it's a matter of integrity, like you say. You tell people, like, look, there are ways to do it, taking shortcuts and all that kind of stuff, but you're not willing to do it. And it seems like you're more in the business of disqualifying customers if they don't understand that every last detail is done as good as it possibly can be.
Yep.
And I guess, as I was starting to say, it's like it's a matter of integrity to just say, look, you're not going to get the job done any better.
Yeah. Um, and I really struggled at the beginning with my business where I was always afraid that if I let a customer walk out of the building that I wasn't going to have another one walk in. And that I always had this hope that each customer would go out and tell 5 of their friends. And um, so I didn't turn a lot of customers away. And I really spent a long time where I was kind of burnt out with this place because um, I just didn't want to deal with the next person to walk through the door. And, unfortunately, we all, when we're in the Marine Corps, everybody does it. At some point they're sitting there and it's, oh, I can't wait till I get out and I can tell everybody to get bent. And the reality is you get out and that's not how it is. I mean, you can do that, absolutely, but there's consequences.
Mm-hmm.
People just aren't going to deal with you. They're going to tell other people. And, so I kind of defaulted far to the being nice to people side. And I really got taken advantage of, on a lot of jobs that, it really took getting a couple of the right customers in and, um, realizing I just didn't have to deal with those annoying customers anymore. Really, they bring that $50 job really just brings more heartache at the end of the day than anything else because you're dealing with that person. Those type of people, you're married to that job. I mean, you could fix their wheelbarrow for them and they can go haul bricks all summer and they're going to bring it back to you and complain that it's cracked again. And it's nothing you did, but if you don't help them out, they're going to go on Google and blast you. And it took a lot of work and kind of getting, I didn't have I wasn't lucky enough to have parents that had, similar jobs or own businesses to teach me how to deal with those types of people. So I really had to learn it the hard way. And the first time I did it was hard. Somebody pressuring me and just handing them their part and saying, obviously I'm not going to be able to make you 100% happy because you're already not there. So, and you deserve to be 100% happy. So why don't you just take this and find somebody else? And once that door closes, don't come back.
Mm-hmm.
And, the first time I did that, I worried for weeks, like, oh, this guy's going to blast me on Google. And then I realized that I didn't even need Google. Realistically, the people that contact me via Google, um, really end up being the worst customers because they're looking for you to slam something together really fast and cheap, and they don't want to pay anything for it. They want it right now, but they want it to last 50 years, and it's just not worth dealing with them. So at this point, I've gotten to the point where I have one customer who is a local guy and his car is it's going to be delivered to his driveway probably this next Wednesday. So aside from the fact that, there's warranty type work on a restoration. But that project's gone, and everything else in the shop is people that are from out of state. So I leave my door locked. Um, my hours on Google read that the shop is by appointment only. So um, I just I work when I want on what I want. Um, it keeps me able to stay creative. I'm not grudge fucking the project to the finish line. Um, if I can be the happier that I am that I'm working on your project, the better the end product is. And that, I mean, that goes with anything. If you're badgering your mom while she's making your grilled cheese, that thing might end up a little bit burnt.
Mm-hmm.
And that applies to everything in life. So um, I'm lucky enough to have the customers that I do, and we're really thinning the herd right now, though. I'm trying to get it down to just one or two customers that are the ones that I want to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
John, as you're talking about that, it reminds me of this author, Cal Newport is his name. He wrote a book called Slow Productivity. And, as we've
Mm-hmm.
spoken of before, as you say, you get into that sort of creative space. And sometimes it takes you, 2 or 3 hours or whatever it is to really sort of
Mm-hmm.
find that groove or like that flow state. So, um, if you could talk to that, because it seems like so many people out there just think like, oh, like once you get started, and this is kind of more like an hourly employee,
Mm-hmm.
managerial type of mindset. It's like, oh, well, when you're on the clock, you're working this and that. And it's like, well, not everybody's
Mm-hmm.
brain works the same to where like you're a robot and you press the on button and then you get,
Mm-hmm.
the best result. So what,
I think
I don't know if you could talk to that.
it kind of depends on what your medium is. If you're a mechanic over at the Ford dealership, absolutely, you have a computer that you're able to plug into that car, and that computer tells you what part to change, which tool to use, what drawer that tool's in. Absolutely, you should be turning things over pretty quick. But what I do, uh, I mean, there's a design process with it, and um, there absolutely is guys out there doing what I do that they're just slamming things together and they're churning them out, and people are cheering, and I mean, I guess they're making money, but to me it's never been about the money. To me it's more about that car, and it really representing the person that owns it, kind of sticking with a theme. Not that, I mean, we're not building Spider-Man cars or anything like that. We're not theme building, but everything has kind of a theme to it. Even a new car has a theme to it. Whether it be wood grain or, everything's carbon fiber, there's always a theme. And you don't want to overlap a bunch of themes, because then you just have this patchwork quilt of a final product. And um, I mean, that, I guess that might represent some of the owners, if you let, because a lot of times um, I spend a lot of time talking customers off the cliff on an idea that I recognize isn't going to provide anything positive to the project. It's off theme. Sometimes it's gaudy. Just because you can hang something somewhere doesn't mean that it's in the right room.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spend a lot of time so out in the shop area above where we talked last time. I built a loft, and I can sit up on the loft, and I look down. My chassis table's right below that, and I will sit and I can stare at my chassis table for a couple hours and the project in there. And um, for me, I'm not playing to a TV audience. I'm playing to an audience of my peers. Um, I'm looking for the approval of my buddies who own hot rod shops. I don't need the approval some guy who, you know, he might be a factory worker somewhere and he's got a car. That's great. I love that as many people as possible in the hobby, but his approval isn't what I'm looking for at the end of the day, because his approval is usually based on some things he saw or somebody told him, not necessarily on actively producing some type of a product at a certain level. And so I spend a lot of time looking at things, and I want it to be appealing to the eye. I want it to, you know, I guess you would say be organic, where when you look at it, it even no matter what its purpose is that it serves, it looks like it belongs where it's at. It doesn't look like an afterthought. And so I'll labor for hours at a time sometimes. And then, sometimes the process of going from that design phase into the work phase and completion, sometimes that goes really fast. And you can make up some of that time. But yeah, there is a lot of time, and I used to spend a ton of time that I didn't charge customers for. I didn't write it on a bill. And then I learned that it doesn't matter if you charge them for some of that time or not, they're going to complain about the bill. So it doesn't matter how much money they have, they're going to complain about the bill. Everybody wants a better deal. We think we're bartering in Mexico here, you know, on the streets over a piñata that we want to bring home to our cousin's birthday party. You know, not this expensive, you know, custom car that they're going to go and ultimately they want to go and show off to their friends and have their buddies tell them what a cool car it is. But they also want it for free.
Mm-hmm.
And we all want a better deal. I get it. Uh, but yeah, I used to feel really, really bad about spending that time, and I really had to, you know, a lot of talking to again, talking to my peers and what they go through and their processes. And, you know, I kind of came to realize that a lot of that feeling like I had to hurry, um, you know, of course, Discovery Channel made it where in this industry that I'm in, everybody thinks you can build a car in 7 days. They don't realize that on those TV shows, there's 150 guys working around the clock over that 7 days. And it still takes 6,000 hours. They just made it up in manpower. Uh, but a lot of that feeling of having to rush came from the Marine Corps. And
Mm-hmm.
um, hey, we need you to change a gearbox tonight, a main gearbox, and we want it testing at sunrise. We're going to get it done. Absolutely, we're going to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be a ton of people whose feelings are hurt. You're going to you're going to have 5 times the possibility of somebody losing a freaking finger because you're hurrying. But we're going to get the mission done because that's what we do. And you get out and you're feeling the exact same way. And the reality is no, there's no deadlines. There's no flight schedule to meet here. There's, you know, I'm not curing cancer in here. Um, if it doesn't get, if it takes a little longer to get it done because the creative process takes a little longer, then it takes a little longer to get it done. And if you have a deadline, then your project's going to suffer, because you're gonna get to the end, and anybody who's done a project, no matter what the project is, you know, even with that main gearbox, you know, you get to the end, and that's where you have the most chance for failure, because people are hurrying, because the clock's running down, and you're making concessions, and you're forgetting things, and then the next thing you know, your product's a piece of crap, and it spends 3 days testing because they're finding all kinds of things that are wrong, when, you know, if you'd have just spent that extra 4 or 5 hours and maybe tested at 11, it might have been a better product. And it took a long time and a lot of you know, a lot of counseling sessions with my homies that have been in business for a long time, telling me, hey, dude, just calm down a little bit. You know, it can take a little longer. So I think we all struggle with that to some level. And I mean, some of us more so. A
Mhm.
lot of times, you know, a lot of us that went in the Marine Corps were hyperactive. And so it's not necessarily something the Marine Corps manifested into us and taught us to be. Sometimes it's an exploited trait where they already were kind of dancing on the ledge and we pushed them over, and now there's no coming back, and they're just completely nuts and OCD about the things they do. And but I think we all struggle to some level with that. I mean, think about the first time you hit the showers in boot camp and they're going through, you're showering by the numbers, and you know, everybody's soaping their left arm at the same time and rinsing it off at the same time. And I mean, nobody walks away from something like that completely unscathed. I mean,
Mhm.
everybody's kind, you know, everybody's got a little bit of a different startle response at that point.
Yeah, that was a bizarre time. Like water's on at at a certain time, off at a certain
Oh
time,
yeah.
and
And you know, and it didn't make sense when we were there, but it makes sense now. You know,
Mhm.
everything you do, everything for a reason. You step off on the left foot for a reason. You cross your legs for a reason. You know, when you're sitting in the school circle, you know, you learn in second phase that it's because that's the way you keep your legs for the sitting position for shooting, because it's the most stable sitting position. I mean, everything has these reasons, and if you open your eyes and realize it, you know, it's just like playing a video game. You know, it's just a matter of learning the order of things and the reasoning behind things, and um, you know, and it continues going through school and then into your work processes. And it's amazing how many people just completely fall off the wagon. You know, it's 6 months after basic training and they show up to a squadron, they don't know how to shower anymore, and gray sheets, and you got to go in there, freaking go to the bricks to their room and stand there and show them how to use the washer machine, clean their sheets. But but I mean, if you just apply those simple things, even on the outside, your life's pretty easy.
Mhm.
we've talked about this before. It's kind of changing gears a little bit, but it seems like with the benefit of social media, and of course, Rippin' Shitters is a big page. I think they just passed 70,000 followers on there. Um, there seems to be a big shift from, say, all of the special forces guys. Joe Rogan's had a lot of them on. Obviously, Jocko's put out a lot of great info and stuff for people to build themselves with, mindset stuff and all that. But of course, guys like you and me, or let's say, it seems that, and I've heard this from other people too, other veterans, is that that sort of appeals to guys who are, say, in their teens and 20s or something like that, not as much to guys who are, say, in their 30s or 40s. But what do you think it is that is um, kind of fueling more of this interest in like the aviation side of the military? It seems like that's gaining some momentum. Obviously, we can look at Lieutenant Colonel Isaac Lee, with Hangar 4. For all of us 53 guys, we can read that book, and it's like, we're on the plane again,
Hmm.
experiencing that lifestyle. So, what do you think it is that is resonating with so many people these days? And I guess I'll throw this on too. The clip, of you talking, 30, 40 seconds long or whatever, talking about basically what it's like to be a crew chief. You're a mechanic, you're working on the plane, and then you have to trust your work, and you're working just constantly, and then you got to trust your work
Hmm.
enough to go and fly on it. That's got 20 plus thousand views or something like that. So what do you think it is that people are appreciating about that these days?
I think, you know, when I went in there, you know, the internet didn't exist. Um, my experience in aviation, you know, I knew when I was 5 years old I was going to join the Marine Corps. My uncle
Mhm.
was a Marine officer in Vietnam, highly decorated with valor, and I wanted to be him. But growing up, and he died early. He got brain cancer, and I think I was 6 or 7 years old, but that was already imprinted in me. And my grandparents lived down in Irvine, California. So, and I was a handful as a child, had a lot of energy. I wasn't a child you were just going to lock in a bedroom and just was just going to hang out. Like I needed to be actively doing something. I needed a tree to climb or something to engage me. And so my grandmother used to take me over to the fence line at Tustin, and I would stand at the fence line and watch aircraft take off and land. So I had a connection to that aviation because I was able to see it. It was a tangible to me. Um, you know, again, being in that area, you know, El Toro, Tustin, they had air shows every year. Miramar later on, all the Air Force bases in Southern California. So I really had I had this direct connection to aviation that I was able to touch these airplanes. You know, I'm able to touch an SR-71 at at an air show on an Air Force base, and so for me it was really easy. Um, but for some kid living in Kansas, they've never seen that stuff. They've never experienced it. So I think in that realm, the internet really helps.
Mhm.
But I also think there's this shift as well where, you know, my idea of going as a child going in the Marine Corps or in any fighting service for that matter was I was talking to my grandparents about World War II stories. I was talking to uncles about Vietnam, and these are all guys that were out, you know, they're out doing the grunt work. And so that was a lot of what we were hearing, you know, the war stories we were hearing didn't involve technology because the technology wasn't there. I mean, first time we were really using helicopters in combat was in Korea, and you know, but they were still there wasn't very many of them. And when you get into, you know, the global war on terrorism era, all of a sudden, you know, everything we're doing that aviation's right at the forefront of it. I mean, you're seeing videos of Cobras and Hueys coming in and clearing the way, and then all of a sudden, you know, assault support comes in and drops off a company of Marines, and then they just provide hate and discontent. Like when, you know, when somebody tells you about that, there's this impact. Um, but when you can watch the videos almost in real time, I mean, towards the end of the global war on terrors, I mean, guys were able to load this stuff right up, you know, via satellite to Facebook and Instagram. So we're watching this stuff in real time. And so there's this there I think there's they're seeing more of the other things that the military provides because recruiting's always been about the, recruiting a basic Marine. So the posters had, you know, the guy in camouflage, the recon guy with his face painted, you know, you're looking for men with testosterone to come and do testosterone driven things. And now you've got more information out there. You've got the kids are smarter about technology, and somebody who's smarter about technology isn't necessarily the guy you want in a fighting hole. You know, you want that guy who wants to do that in that fighting hole. You know, somebody who's smart with technology, you still want to recruit that guy. You want to bring him into aviation or the drone. I mean, I guess drones are still aviation, but it's not the same. You don't have to climb inside of it, so you're not one of us.
Mhm.
But still, there's so much more technology driven jobs that I think just kind of by default, you know, when you get into the technical side of things, we're like, I mean, we kind of are like the grunts of the technical side because um, you've got to go out there. As air crew, you're out there. You're bringing the grunts in. Um, that's and it only goes up from there. I mean, we're not, we're not like somebody working in the tower. you know so for somebody who wants to do a job with more technical expertise required, but they also still want to potentially get to really do something, um then you start looking at working on helicopters because I mean, you want it, that's as close to the front as you're going to get if you're working in a technical job. um Even when you get into fixed wing, those, they're still going into country, but the pilots are the only ones actually going out into harm's way. If you want to be an enlisted guy and you want to go out and potentially get in harm's way, you're gonna try to get into, you know, helo aviation. So I think that, there's a whole genre of young men out there that see that and they're like, man, if they're seeing ripping shitters and they're seeing like a lance corporal, some 19-year-old kid on the tail of a 53 hanging out the back shooting a 50 cal. It looks pretty cool. I mean, you get to be a machine gunner without having to lay on the ground in the dirt. You still get to sleep in your rack at night, or at worst on a litter in the aircraft.
Mhm.
So I think that, pages like that really help with, I feel like they help with the recruiting effort, really. I mean, there's people out there that might not think about it, and then they come across some of those videos, and it's like, maybe I want to do that.
Mhm.
And I guess for whatever reason, I just thought, comparing, the 53 Deltas that we worked on, of course, they're made around, late 60s or whatever. And then Yakos came around 10 years later or whatever, still super analog aircraft. And then now, working on the 53 Kilo, which is fly by wire. There's no flight control rods on it. Um, and it's a much simpler aircraft in that way that, you're not so hands-on with like flight control rod bearings and all this sort of stuff.
You don't get to be as much of a
These,
cowboy.
yeah. Uh,
I mean, you're riding a horse, but who's pulling the reins?
mm-hmm. It's weird because, when you think of, getting into flight controls, doing rigs and stuff like that. For those of you who don't know what a rig is, it's, if basically any part of flight controls gets changed, most of the time you've got to start from basically the controls in the cockpit all the way up to the main rotor head, the tail rotor head, like, putting those flight control rods back to baseline. And that's a real art form and can take, uh, it
Not
varies,
everybody
of
can do it.
course. Yeah.
Not everybody can do
Um,
it.
yeah. So these days it's almost like there's less art, and
Mm-hmm.
less expertise that is being required of these things, which I guess is a normal, pattern of progression. But
Well, and while we'd all love to say that, you know, the old way's better or whatever, in from a maintenance perspective and getting the aircraft back in the fight, anything that can cut down that time is gonna help with the mission.
Mhm.
So as much as I, again, you know, in an old school 53, you're holding the reins, and in a Kilo, the computer's holding the reins for you. But the amount of time that an aircraft's down for a full aircraft rig, I mean, it's regardless of what you do, by the time you get done with, because it's not just flight line going out there. You got avionics pulling components out of the E-bays so you can get to flight controls, foot controls. You've got, airframes has to come out and strip the tail for you. And so, I mean, everybody's kind of involved. And by the time everybody's able to get their part done and then put back together, I mean, it's down a whole maintenance day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is what it is. And then that aircraft has to go out and do a C card. And, however long that takes. And, God forbid the reason you're doing a rig is because you did a main rotor head change and, now it's on a track and balance and, you could have a whole nother day or how, depending on the aircraft and the guy you've got out there testing. I mean, not everybody's a good test person, just like not everybody's a good door gunner. But, a lot of times people realize that and you get guys that want to test, but in a worst case scenario, this bird could be down for multiple days. And when you take that small portion of maintenance out of the mix, think about the time you save for getting that aircraft back in the fight.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty wild to think now, having gone from deltas to echoes to kilos now and getting to experience, and really it takes, like, I'm still noticing things too that have been improved, from the previous aircraft. And, Matt Crooks, who I recently interviewed and all that, he was a junior guy to me coming up. And then I think it was Mike McGee. I think he retired as a lieutenant colonel. He was one of our pilots. He was our maintenance officer. They were both, and then Eric Fraley as well. Matt Crooks and Eric Fraley came into 362 at the same time. Those three guys all had hands in the development of the 53 kilo. And it's pretty impressive to see how much thought, had gone into that. And I'm learning too, it's a whole different conversation, but, the delays and the being over budget
Mm-hmm.
and all this sort of stuff, that's a different thing, but, it's pretty wild.
Well, sometimes those delays, while it's unfortunate they're happening in the development process, it's better to happen in the development process than once you've fielded the aircraft.
Yeah.
You've got, in the development process, you've got engineers there to figure it out. Once you've fielded that aircraft, if they start noticing, trends that could have been found in development, again, think about how much time the aircraft's down in maintenance, waiting on an engineer to fly in from Virginia or whatever. There was this time when I first became a crew chief where there was a possibility that if I had stayed in and gone to 20, I could have been there for the fielding of that aircraft and been able to fly on it. And it was almost 10 years late, something like that. So never would have happened. But I'd rather see that delay now than that delay happening out, for a maintenance procedure in some country, wherever we end up, and people, people's lives being excessively at risk because the aircraft wasn't ready to be fielded.
Mm-hmm.
And, so those delays and that extra money, it sucks to see those numbers and, the public complains about it, but how many lives does it save down the road because we didn't, burn a hole in the ground with an aircraft because of an issue that could have been found in development with people who are intending when they break the deck to be testing the limits of the aircraft, not learning them, suddenly in, somewhere over the Kahukus.
Yeah. Better to find out on the front end. That's for sure. And those, the 6 missing rivets I found, that I told you about, I just checked in on that as well, because they did a fleet-wide inspection to see if any others were missing them. And what I've heard so far is that 4 other planes out of
Really?
20 or
So it's
so
a trend
out there.
now.
That's a trend. So,
Wonder,
Pretty interesting.
I wonder if they were all coming across that line around the same time, and one of the, that's those nights or days, whatever, when you're working, and you there you want to leave, but at the same time, it's like, if I don't do this right now, I may forget, and who knows how far down the line it goes before it gets found. I mean, this happened at assembly, so you know what day did all this happen? Was it,
Yeah.
were all these around the same time? Is this a person who was missing something? But um and it's awesome that you found those, because to me, it makes me feel good, for one, because having been one of the instructors in crew chief school, and that being where you guys, really get your first taste of how to daily an aircraft and looking at things, and um, always, I always, my biggest thing has always been that 18-inch rule.
Mm-hmm.
And if you find something within that 18 inches, you better be looking 18 inches around that. And it doesn't matter if that 18 inches gets so big that it covers the whole footprint of the aircraft, then we're going to go over the whole damn thing. And so when I hear that, here it is, 20 some years later, and, um, that's something that how many people before you just missed it because they just took it for granted that it was there, or took it for granted that the card didn't tell you to look there, or whatever, and you happened to find it because you were looking around the place, looking around everything. And so that's awesome, because that's how we stay alive till tomorrow. I mean, those couple rivets, in the grand scheme of things, they don't the aircraft wasn't just going to fall out of the sky because of them. But how you do one thing is how you're going to do all things.
Mm-hmm.
So if you treat that way, then it gets easier and easier to treat smaller things that way, to the point where you just hit that point where you're like, well, I'll do it tomorrow. And which is probably how that happened to begin with, was I'll do it tomorrow, and it was just an oversight, I'm sure. But it just, again, it feels good to see that, guys that because we all want to have an impact in life, and as men, we don't get the luxury, like, women can reproduce. I mean, talk about leaving your mark. You're leaving a whole human, and not only that, like, if you want to leave a shitty mark, you can leave a real shitty human being behind if you choose to do so. But as men, we want to, you want some relevance. You want to know that something you did mattered. And so, when you look back and it's like, hey, I had an impact on this person, and, you know, as men, it's like, hey, you know what? That's me continuing on, because I had an impact on this person, and then now he's going to go out and he's going to train however many people, and that impact's going to be bigger and bigger. So it always feels good to hear, hey, one of the guys that worked for me or with me at some time took something from that. And so again, it's awesome to hear that. And I mean, hell, dude, I've shut down the whole squadron of planes before. I never shut down the whole fleet. That's pretty awesome. I mean, you got everybody. I mean, sure, there's only what, 461, I think, is the only full squadron of them, right?
Right.
But still, I mean, you got the Marine Corps to take notice. That's pretty good detail work there.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's especially too, working on my business over this last year plus, it's just becoming more and more evident to me that it's like, it's not that I've ever been naturally good at anything. It's just I've had the ability to just try to identify the people around me who I thought were the best at the thing that I wanted to get good at, and just attach myself to them and ask questions as much as I have to in order to, retain that information. And then of course, put it into physical practice, with my hands. So really that's one thing that as we continue to talk about this 53 community, as we do so often, um, that it's like, we've worked around so many amazing people that it's like, if you really take what you learn from the great people around this, it's like, I don't think there's any better place to learn from, like aviation, especially when it's helicopters, when it's military, and there's so much on the line, especially a big helicopter. Not to shit on the guys who are on the Hueys and Cobras or anything like that, but when you got, say, potentially 20 some people coming on board, you got all kinds of cargo, and then it's a crew of 4 or 5 or whatever it is.
Well, I think it's just, I think we all have our thing, because for them, they may, like with the skids, they don't, like, we've got to worry about all those combat loaded troops and our own asses. But for us, we get to come in behind the Hueys and Cobras. So those guys, they've got a little something else to worry about. They got to worry about that initial return fire. They got to worry about that, that anti-aircraft gun that they roll out on them. They gotta smoke that for us so we can get in. So it's just kind of, I think it's just a different placement of the same kind of worry and thought process. That's why those guys, the Huey crew chiefs are so just, they're gun guys, because that's their version of keeping the cabin safe, is having that gun and it working. Because when you got 6 barrels running at 4,000 RPMs, you a little problem can become a big problem real quick. So so I think that energy that we're putting into, I want to keep these packs safe, I want to make sure that the cabin is safe. I think that theirs is on a different level, where it is different in that, if we're bringing, on the D's, it was 24 persons. I mean, you're worried about 24 people. They're worried about 4 people, but also they're worried about us because we're coming in behind them one way or another. So I just think it's a different placement. And at the end of the day, we're all seeking the same mission, and that's to get as many people to where they need to be as safely as we can, and then the casualties out. And we just each have our place in the mission. And it kind of leads me to, there's a lot of bullying within the veteran ranks in general. We have our own bullying within aviation, but the highest public eye would be on the special forces guys that just want to eat each other alive in the public eye. But even just, at the smaller level, just within our own groups of, when the grunts calling us pogues, and, oh, well, you guys you're not grunts, and, well, that's fine, but you still need a ride. Like,
right.
I mean, you obviously can't drive the bus yourself, so you need us, like, and we need somebody to give a ride to, because without them, they don't need us. But instead, we just have this constant infighting, and it's crazy to me, because I see 50-year-old men calling other people pogue, and just, and the thing is, at the end of the day, again, we all had the same mission. We all had the same, we were all trying to do the same thing, and we're all on the same team. You think the quarterback on the football team tells the lineman that they're lesser than him? No, because they're blocking for him, and they're on a team, and that team needs each of its players in each of their places. but I feel like it's unfortunate because um, so many of the vets out there they're struggling with something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all joined because we were running from something, and now we're all struggling from something. None of us gets to, you don't get to walk, none of us gets to walk away without some kind of baggage.
Mm-hmm.
And, and sometimes that baggage for some of these guys, um, it becomes an outside baggage too, because, you get kicked out or you do something criminal, whatever, like things can compound and, we don't necessarily know what this other guy's struggling with. And, you know, I, I heard uh, a quote in this movie. I don't know if you've watched it. It's the greatest beer run ever, and
Uh-uh.
it's on Apple Movies, and it's about this guy he's a merchant marine, and he brings beer from home, and he's trying to meet up with all of his buddies in Vietnam and have beers with them. But at the beginning of the movie, Bill Murray is the bartender at this bar, and he snaps at this guy, and the guy goes, "Man, you got a short fuse," and he goes, "It's not that I got a short fuse. You just don't know when it was lit."
Uh-huh.
And that just it resonates with me because I'm one of those people where um I'll carry some shit with me. Somebody pisses me off the right way, I'll carry it around for a while, and to the point where somebody else might just not even just have this slightly negative interaction and I'll unload. And they didn't deserve all that, but they don't know when the fuse was lit. And, so I kind of, I look at it like I try to, I try not to do that to guys because I don't know what they're going through right now. And I don't want to be the straw that broke the camel's back. And, and not just necessarily them lash out at me necessarily, but, um, I don't know who's struggling with their will to live,
Mm-hmm.
and, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna compound things for him by telling him, oh, well, what you did was lesser than what somebody else did. Hey
Mm-hmm.
man, that dude don't need that. And we're all supposed to be brothers anyway. I mean, we all lived it while we were in, why can't we live it
Mm-hmm.
now? We go to the bar, and I tell you what, when I would go to the bar with my boys from Texas, and I mean, my flight line shot, we were tight, dude. And we would go to the bar and wasn't nobody fucking with nobody
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, we had cowboys, we had dudes that looked like they belonged in a New York nightclub, you know, all manner of people in this group, but nobody messed with us because we were all brothers. And you're getting the whole basket. You don't get, you're not just gonna, you better bring a whole team with you if you're gonna mess with one of us, because none of us is gonna let anybody get hassled.
Mm-hmm.
And, now, and you look at, here we are on the outside, and, you know, a lot of times the guys that are talking all the biggest shit, and, oh, I did this, I did that, it's because they never did anything else after.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of guys out there, they got out and they hung their hat on the Marine Corps was the biggest thing they were ever going to do, because that's what they told us. You're never going to do anything bigger. You're never going to be better than this. And the reality is that's bullshit. The Marine Corps gave you the tools to go out and succeed on anything that you want to succeed on. And if you want to succeed on failing, it gave you the tools to do that too. But those guys that have gone out and chased the lease, they're still hanging their hat on that. And that's why they're gatekeeping that shit. But the
Mm-hmm.
reality is all that stuff is awesome because that's what made us who we are. That's what made us strong enough to be fathers, be leaders within our community. But if you're still hanging your hat on I got to go. I had the opportunity, because really, like, whether it's good or bad, you have an opportunity. You're either going to get the opportunity for some suffrage, or you're going to get the opportunity for a good time. But you had the opportunity to go and do something, and not everybody gets the same opportunities. I mean, hell, when I got to Hawaii, um, that was a non-deploying place. I came off of a Westpac with an F-18 unit. I lap moved to 53s, and I got to Hawaii, and as a corporal, I had I had more ribbons on my Charlies than some of the staff sergeants, because they had spent their whole time in Hawaii. And it was crazy to me, because the ops tempo of my first 4 years in the Marine Corps, we were a Victor unit. We were on a carrier. We were out there doing shit every day. And when I got to Hawaii, and I'm like, wait, we don't go anywhere? Like, it blew me away. But can you fault those guys for being stationed there? No, because you, that's where most guys that were stationed there on their first term that re-enlisted were trying to get out of there. They weren't trying to make a career of not deploying. But is it fair to tell somebody who got sent to the ACE before it was the MAG, the aviation support element, got sent there at a time where they spent 4 years there and never deployed anywhere? It's not fair to minimize their service, because at the end of the day, we all wrote a blank check and hope for the best.
Mm-hmm.
That best being that you got to go home to mom at some point, with, best case being all your digits and toes. But we all wrote an open-ended check, knowing that the other end of that, somebody knocking on mom's door to tell her you weren't coming home, that was also a potential. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you you throwing the ball on and betting on black, and so we all wrote that check, and everybody got to do what they were allowed to do. And now here we are on the outside, and I feel like some of the biggest bullies are the people who did the least. And and you've got veterans at this disproportionate level that are committing suicide. And I mean, and shoot, one of your classmates, and in crew chief school. And that dude, I mean, sure, he went on a crime spree beforehand, but he was struggling with something inside. And uh I mean, he was always chasing a different level of dream that wasn't ever going to become a reality. Um but we don't know what a dude's going through. People are struggling if you're failing at life. And the wife just took off, she took the kids, she's got the house and the car, and you're living in a studio apartment somewhere, and now your brothers are beating on you because, oh, well, no, you didn't even do enough there.
Right.
I feel like we, again, getting back to that, we're supposed to be brothers. If we could go out to the bars together, and it didn't matter, I mean, if you were Mexican, black, white, or what, everybody was green, and we were all on the same team. And it's kind of sad to see veterans attacking each other, and just, you know, trying to discount whatever they did. And I mean, we watch it again, it's this SEAL team community. It's crazy that they just go after each other.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's all a bunch of guys that are trying to chase that top tier. And but they're fighting amongst each other about stupid stuff. And um and it's in the public eye. And I don't think it's a good trend, because I think a lot of times people hop on trends. Um, nobody wants to be, everybody's cheering on religion right now, and where across 5, 10 years ago, it wasn't cool. Now all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, and I'm happy to see the change and people trying to get away from degeneracy to some level. I mean, we're all some level of a degenerate, but uh, but I mean, trying to find a light at the end of the tunnel. Um, but sometimes, people are sheep, and sometimes it takes a trend on something to make a change. And I really see a trend of just browbeating each other, and especially this time of year, it's the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this is the time when you're about to feel the loneliest if you're alone. And uh, I just think we can all do better.
Mm-hmm.
Reach out and talk to those brothers that you have out there. And I mean, I feel really lucky that I have a pretty decent group of people that that I talk to, and I don't mean just on Facebook. I mean, we all have a ton of those, but that I actually talk to on the phone. Because that's what, we should be reaching out and talking to our brothers on the phone,
Yeah.
not going and shaming them in public. Because I mean, anybody who went to corporal's course was taught that you you always praise in public and you punish in private. Don't browbeat your brothers in public. We should be out there. We should be attacking people that are messing with our brothers.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd rather see that as a trend than the current one of just attacking each other.
Yeah. Seems like if you got something, just like same thing in the Marine Corps, if you have something to bring up with somebody and it might be embarrassing to
Mm-hmm.
them, have,
Mm-hmm.
share a mutual level of respect for that
Yeah.
person, because maybe they made a mistake and they didn't even quite,
Yep.
see it from your perspective at the time. And then you show them, it's like, and they're like, oh shit, I'm literally getting
Mm-hmm.
chills about it right now, because we've all had somebody take us aside at some point with that level of mutual respect to say, hey, look, this, I noticed this, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh shit, like, thank you. Like what an amazing service that is to get from
Mm-hmm.
somebody else, even if it's a 30-second conversation.
Yep. And I'm glad, even for me, um, even if I'm doing something that sucks, one of my brothers will tell me, "Hey, dude, like, that's not good. Change it."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think we need that accountability with each other, where and in order to have that accountability, you also have to have that relationship where you're reaching out and checking out with each other, because um we're all going through something.
Mm-hmm.
And um I'd rather be, I would hate to be the reason, I'd hate to be the straw that broke someone's someone's back. But I just, I don't know. Again, I, I feel like it's a societal trend almost to just degrade everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but we're better than that,
Mm-hmm.
especially as a veteran community, and non-veterans listening. Sorry, but we're better than that. We we signed our name on a line to go do something that was bigger than ourselves. And if you're able to go do something like that where it's bigger than yourself, then you're better than that. You can control yourself to a level where you don't need to be beating down your brother. You don't need to
Mm-hmm.
follow a societal trend, because trends are gay anyway. I mean, you you're going to be cool for the next 6 months and then you're going to change trends again. Miss me with that, dude. I don't need that in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate thing, and a lot of times it just seems like seems probably more than ever before. People are so reactive and like divided for whatever stupid reasons and all this stuff out there, and it's like it's like step out of that stuff, just take a deep breath and say, look, is the way that I'm about to act,
Mm-hmm.
in relation to something I don't like, is it even worth it? Am I going to
Mm-hmm.
suffer more consequences than this little thing is worth? Am I going
Is
to?
it proportionate?
Yeah.
Is my reaction proportionate to the situation?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to pull a pistol out because this guy cut me off in traffic? Probably not.
Right.
It's a disproportionate reaction, but absolutely, I think we need to take a second and think about what we're saying and what we're doing, because your reactionary self is never your best self.
Mm-hmm.
The greater distance you get from whatever situation, generally, the more reasonable you become and the more reasonable decision you make.
Mm-hmm.
Not always. Not everybody's wired that way. Some people are just wired for violence, but
Mm-hmm.
but I absolutely, and you apply it to everything. Do I need to yell at the clerk down at the city when I pay my water bill because she's fumbling around something? Like, I don't know what she's going through.
Right.
I'm going to be proportionate here. Her fingers aren't
Mm-hmm.
working correctly for her. I'm going to bite my tongue, and I might be in a hurry, but I'm going to move along.
Mm-hmm. That sounds sort of familiar to what special forces guy saw talk a couple years ago, and it was a talk about preparedness, and Mike Glover, Fieldcraft Survival. I think he was I forget if he was a ranger or one of those other Army Special Forces guys, but he pointed out, sort of in this like overreactive, proportionate thing. He pointed out, and this is kind of more of a physical appearance type of thing, but he said, take a look around, like look, all you have to do, a big indicator of your preparedness is your physical well-being. He said, if you can't do 10 push-ups, you're not, he's like, I don't care about all the gear that you're wearing. If you're not taking care of yourself on that level, no amount of gear is going to make up for that. So that seems to be one of those too, that there's like you say, some people are kind of more prone toward violence and whatnot, and maybe it's like, hey, let me take a step back before I posture on this level or try to show I have all this cool stuff, and take a little bit deeper look on the inside. And this is not to tear these guys down, but just so that they can say, hey, look, is there something else that I can do for myself here, so that I don't have to try to present a threatening persona to people around me? Because if there's somebody who's going to go out,
they want to control everything around them except themselves.
Wow.
And learning to control yourself gives you more control of the situation. Because if you can't control yourself and you step into a situation, you don't know all the variables, and you don't know what their reaction is going to be. They may be way crazier than you.
And it seems better to be, have more of a reserve to react or respond to a situation, rather than posture with all this. And then, because of course these sort of public shootings and stuff like that, like this is on people's minds and whatnot, who are sort of into this sphere in the self-defense area and all that stuff, that it's like, if you look like the guy who's already prepared for that event and you're open carrying or whatever it is, then the person who wants to cause, chaos, like they're going to look at you
You're a
first. Like,
deterrent.
okay, I have to get rid of you first, and then I can do what I want to do, rather than looking at least somewhat under the radar, and then having a little extra on the backside. So that's always one thing for these people to consider as well.
Well, if you look at the animal kingdom, and or look at a rattlesnake. You get bit by a baby rattlesnake, it unleashes everything it has in its venom pockets into you, because it doesn't know how to control its venom yet. Whereas if an adult rattlesnake hits you, they know exactly how much they need to put into you, into that situation for them, because ultimately they're just trying to get away. It's not going to, you're not a food source, and it's defending itself so you can get away. And, so it's a matter of learning to control your venom while also making it clear that you have the venom available, that being prepared, that not, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, the wearing tactical gear and looking tactical. But just, if you just look like you're prepared, then you're going to be more prepared. If you just look prepared, it's kind of like, that's like it's like the rattle on the rattlesnake. You hear the rattle before it strikes. Well, you see that somebody's prepared. You're not gonna try to strong arm the giant guy that obviously is a fighter. And so if you keep yourself prepared and looking prepared, you're less of a target for anything, whether it be the belligerent person on the corner or violence or whatever. I tell my kids we don't leave the house in pajamas and Crocs and go to Walmart. No, we leave dressed for battle, because you don't know what is going to happen between the time you leave the house and the time you return to the house. And pajamas are for sleeping, and there's no beds in between. So, but you're prepared, you're dressed, you have normal footwear on, you're less of a target for any number of things. And as well as, if something happens and you need to help, you're more prepared for that. And we live in a world where 99% of the people walk around unprepared, and they've got their mouth running and they've got it in the wrong gear. And the only way to not get caught up in that is to just make yourself prepared to not be caught up in it. If you look like a bum, you're gonna deal with things that bums deal with.
Well, how about this, dude? I got to get running. That seems like a good spot to leave it at. And then, it gives us plenty. It's funny too, because we'll of course hop on these calls for 2-3 hours at a time or whatever, every few weeks or whatever it is, and it's like, oh, we got to talk about this the next time we podcast. So,
we need to make it more regular.
Yeah, more regular, absolutely.
Yeah. Grab a third or fourth person, maybe make it a forum.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely more people out there doing it. And this is one thing I guess I'll leave it on too, is that I ask a fair amount of 53 guys now, if they want a podcast, and they're the big reaction is often like, I don't have anything to say, or or something like that. And it's like, dude, it's like 53 guys are some of the most hilarious people I've ever met. And it's like, you step into that, hangar or whatever for 10, 12 or however many hours a day. And it's like, it's hilarious because you have to make things hilarious in order to stay sane because of all the work. And I asked one guy the other day, of course, I won't mention any names on this, but I was like, dude, you got a bunch of cool stories. And he's like, dude, all my stories are illegal.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll get myself caught up in telling a story to somebody who's an outsider, if you will. And I'll get deep enough in the story, and then I'll catch myself and I'm like, oh shit. I'm about to, for one, these dudes are about to learn about a side of me that they didn't know existed.
Yeah,
they're going to look at me way different after the story. And that is going to be after I edit some of this, because I'm deep enough in where there's no stopping the story. I have to finish the story in some form. And even the mildest form that I can turn this event into, is going to make them look at me like I'm off my rocker.
Right.
But but yeah, I think a lot of times we when we say that we don't have anything to say, we all know better than that. I think the biggest hurdle to get over is knowing that you're about to record something and everybody's going to watch it. Maybe not everybody, but not everybody watching it is going to like it. I mean, sure, some people, you know that your buddies are going to tell you did good or whatever, but just putting yourself out there, that's nerve-wracking. I mean, the last time beforehand, it was out for 3 or 4 days after you sent me the link before I ever listened to it. Cause I'm like, if I listen to it, my inner monologue is going to, pick this thing apart for, to the end of time. I don't want to listen to it because I don't want to pick myself apart. So I think a lot of times there's that hurdle of getting past that fear of, talking to a group of people that you don't know who they are. But at the end of the day, we've all put ourselves out there at some point, and somebody wants to hear what you have to say.
Absolutely.
So we all have something to say, and even if it's not all amazing, something there's gonna be something good out of it for somebody, and that's enough to say fuck it and run with it. But it was also enough for me to make sure I had a better backdrop this time than just a random beat up customer's car that was waiting for its restoration.
Well, better than me being in the mobile studio here, so.
Oh, well, good. Always good talking to you, Craig.
Yeah, man. You too, John. All right, brother. We'll
talk
catch you again here soon.
All right. Have a good Christmas.
All right. You too. Later.
All right. Bye.